And we are back once again. This is Epic Disposer, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, and Occult Science today with an exclusive segment which is going to unveil something extremely powerful we are releasing into the reality field. I'm here with the Jedi, Eric Jennings, the man behind the hard science of the Nectar of Athanasia. He and I are going to dive into things, unveiling secrets in terms of the occult that have well been sought after by many magicians and alchemists throughout the centuries here on Black Earth Productions. It's going to be partnered with you here in terms and going back to ancient times, the true history of our world and the memories and the quality of what's being revealed in terms of the procession. Things in context to Eden and how a lot of Christians would view this. I'm not a Christian, but taking the history back millions of years to how things were before what happened did. Touch upon Eden.
What I'd like to say about Eden and the entire history of the biosphere on this earth, if you look at all the different periods in the Earth's ecological life's history, you'll see these different periods where life spawned, organisms and kingdoms of organisms evolved, competed, special abilities developed and adapted to specific environments. And it's a very interesting process because when you go back to periods like the Cambrian period and other periods where there's a huge explosion of life and there's the highest numeric quantity of new kingdoms of life, there was a higher quantity of gold particle in the actual biosphere, in the atmosphere, in the water, and in the ecological systems and life and organisms themselves. When life was seeding on this planet in different periods of time, it almost seems like it was reseeding because there was periods where this would happen and then there'd be a huge cataclysmic event. Not everything would survive. And then it would happen again. And when you see it happening again, and you look in the ecological systems record and in the permafrost in Antarctica and the North Pole, not just Antarctica, you'll see that there was more this superconducting at biological temperature element, gold nanoparticle. And it was shining more frequencies of light into all the ecological life when it was in higher quantity at that time. Gold is a nanoparticle in water in biological life versus other minerals. All the other minerals in the periodic chart, they will corrupt, whereas gold will just keep superconducting light energy in more frequency ranges. So when it's operating in life and life needs to receive light energy, it's able to develop more and in more diverse ways because it's receiving energy in more frequencies under more conditions. It's not corrupting. Totally different element and functionality of a mineral in ecological systems and in life. When you look through these cycling periods where life was increasing in quantity, kingdoms of life was increasing in quantity, you see this element was there in higher quantity. Scientifically, they've proven this. Now, what's interesting about that is that if you go through Essene records on Eden or Egyptian records on Eden, and all the other civilizations that came between the time of 3,500 years ago, you go back even further. And then all the way to the time of the Essenes in year zero, from when Cleopatra fell in 40 BC to year zero and on, in the Library of Alexandria and in the Temple of Jerusalem, they have books and they have many documents that wrote about Eden and described the same thing the Egyptians were. And if you read the descriptions, it describes gold and gold-like properties of gold in a mineral that was in the water, that was in the ecological system and in all of life. And it gave it more light energy. And it was in a higher abundance at that time. They really describe gold and liquid gold and the element of gold just being in ecology and in life more. That means that there were ancient writers and librarians and scientists that keep records of the sort that knew this and described it. Modern science is saying the same things that these ancient people were saying. And if you read enough of both of them, you'll see more and more parallels, and there's just too many parallels. And there's too many facts proving these ancient texts true that corroborate what the ancients knew in Egypt, who were just librarians of all these different civilizations, that they actually kept the knowledge and they knew and they passed it along generation by generation. I have the evidence and I've spent 35 years finding it, stacking it, and aligning it.
Right. In terms of the science that you develop, the high science, the high alchemical science, and what this actually does and the effects that I've been personally experiencing are off the fucking charts. And the alignment of that which is extracted, the rites of initiation, in context to the gold of consciousness, has met the multidimensional organic activations I've experienced myself over the last 20 years in a way that I cannot even put into fucking words. And this is why it is important for individuals to understand the importance of doing the real work and actually preparing yourself for the process integration of higher consciousness and knowing how to navigate consciousness, not just being aware of what the fuck is happening in our world right now. The counterstrike, as far as I'm concerned, in the face of what the fuck is happening in the world, this is going to be what's necessary on a greater level for people that are ready to cross this threshold, to pull our world back into alignment in context to the solar north. And again, going back to these metaphysical arts and sciences and the history and all of this is millions of years. It's a question of who the fuck is doing it. We're doing it. Recreated. The very thing that the war of the fucking gods was fought over.
That's what the ancient texts say, you're right.
Take it back to the Nectar, hence the term, Athanasia, which means immortality, our birthright as humans, and what belongs to us. And with the development of technologies, it's very interesting how the hexagon specifically is used. Again, going back to the cube, and we can talk about Saturn and the inversion of these energies being used against us. But the alignment of Saturn and the Saturn energy in terms of the age of Aquarius that we are coming into. Saturn also rules Aquarius, the scientist, the innovator, the humanitarian. And you got these mad motherfuckers, these dark ones, like everybody knows that comes onto this platform. What has been developed, as far as I'm concerned, is unlike anything else that has happened since what happened did. The original mystery school. This is what I've been working to recreate.
Yes, that's very important.
Right. And the history in terms of what happened in Egypt and the verifications all go back to the 18th and 19th dynasty.
That's the only dynasties that are in the Valley of the Kings. Most people don't realize that. They never found any of the mummies from the previous dynasties. There's a reason there's only 2 dynasties in there when there should be 33. If you look at the Kings list records that 18th and 19th dynasty made, it's very different than what the present world's Kings list of all the 33 dynasties. And the Egyptians' views on restoration of Eden and restoring and being aware of what that was, if you look at the height of these empires and civilizations, they all were obsessed, especially the Egyptians for the longest period of time, on the restoration of Eden and the knowledge of what Eden was. And the restoration of what is the healthiest possible earth you can imagine, in charge of the stewardship of the earth that influence human behavior, and NGOs, non-governmental organizations pertaining to stewardship of the earth and the health of the ecological system and the guides along the way throughout its entire history. And then from there, springboarding the whole world. From 1850 to 1950 was the biggest wars in human history. And the founding of the United Nations and all these global governance will say humans are polluting the earth and humans are doing all of this wrong and that wrong and this bad and that bad. We have to create all these organizations and government structures to control and regulate and monitor you through AI and through all the software and the global-based governance systems that are coming out that are beyond standard government systems that we've had. That's breached and gone beyond the Bill of Rights in our Constitution into whole other realms. It's the same elite that was behind the wars, the conflicts, and these archaeological expeditions that found the archaeological records of the most healthiest previous states of the Earth's life itself, the biosphere and the ecological systems of Earth. There was more oxygen, 400% more oxygen, and there was more gold nanoparticle in the liquid, in the water, in all the ecological systems. And all of these empires, from the beginning of all these wars and conflicts and events, all the way back through all the empires that have existed, in charge of these libraries and these subjects, they were the owners of the gold vaults that are behind the empires themselves and the major countries and civilizations. So if you go to Egypt, you'll find there's 10-foot thick walls in Karnak and gold vault and the Temple of Amun-Ra, where they kept a lot of records pertaining to Heliopolis and pertaining to the Hathor temples that kept the records on what Eden was and the restoration of Eden. And they found over 270,000 different mummified species like you'd find in a seed vault. And they were trying to keep a record of the ecological systems on Earth thousands of years ago and keeping a record of the health state of not just their self and their species, but all species and the ecological system and biosphere itself. And this is where gold is interesting because it's also a part of that entire history. We're talking about the restoration over a higher, healthier biosphere, putting yourself and your body under the conditions of a healthier ecological system and biosphere. Anytime any human is in higher oxygen or is in cleaner water, more gold particle in the water or superconducting elements, gold especially, the science is there all throughout history, throughout time, confirming that these things are and always have been known.
And it's stated by magicians and alchemists throughout the hail.
Absolutely. The smartest ones, yeah.
It has been clarified that the more gold you have in your system, the more incorruptible you become. Now you wonder why they're doing what they're doing, because they know they can't fucking stop this.
Yeah, because the element itself is incorruptible. Every single super city on the planet and every capital in every country has a 10-foot thick wall gold vaults. And that structure for every empire that's here on the earth right now was there in every previous empire, every previous civilization, every previous age. It's been there all along. Just like the knowledge on the Eden biosphere and the study of keeping yourself and the ecological system you're inside of healthy has been an ongoing research and science and depository libraries of information throughout all of human history. These records intertwined on all these subjects.
So in terms of the first war, taking it back, hailing the ancestors, the Aesir and the Vanir, this war was over the nectar of immortality. It was over the gold of consciousness. It was over that which is within the core essence of who we are as mankind. And in terms of the convergence of the 8 gates and 9 worlds to the spindle of the true universal tree of life, the conductor in terms of magic and electromagnetics to the photonic light and power of Thunar itself, being the cause point of ignition within the core essence of who we are in order to extract the gold of consciousness. This was everything and still is everything that the parasite and these fallen celestials have come to harvest. That was the point to everything, locking it down into vaults and to keep us from the libraries, the true knowledge, the vault of ignition, taking things back to the original teaching and what all of this is implemented in terms of the mystery school. And now what you have done in terms of the hard science and chemistry and manifestation of the gold, liquid gold nectar, the flesh of Ra itself in terms of a more ancient mythos. Odin is the light that reflects the light of the sun. Odin is the sun. Odin is the lightning and the thunder. Odin is the fire. Odin is the gold reflected, the light of Odin. And as stated, gold is extremely important. What individuals listening to this segment need to recognize in terms of everything we're going to continue to get into is that this is nothing to do with MFKZT, this is nothing to do with monoatomic gold, and this is nothing to do with Ormus. This is something far more pure and far more powerful. And we are the first ones to launch it into the reality field since what happened did, to hail the birthright and legacy in terms of the Magi Grail Shaman. It is everything to which this platform represents, let alone the mystery school, taking it back to the original teaching and birthright of mankind. This is what we are here to implement, and this is what can now not be stopped. When you tap into things on a level which takes the true rites of initiation to achieve, you're going to start tapping into grid works of consciousness that are so fucking far beyond
exactly
lockdown equations and these mathematical reversals and the poison and the tar and the distortions, and all the nets, traps, and snares are going to be fucking broken when this ignition takes place. You had mentioned to me in terms of our correspondence that when the gold nanoparticle goes into the mitochondria of the cell structure itself, that it lights up the sun bonds in your cell structure like tiny little suns. Explain a little bit more in terms of
all life on Earth that's multicellular, and all human life has a partnership with mitochondria, and that mitochondria exists in every cell in your body, and it's in the highest concentration in your heart and in the third eye part of your brain, which also functions like a heart and has heart type of cells in it. Mitochondria is very important because it's a bag of mineral water that powers the cell. It's the battery, it's the light body of the cell that powers the cell. So in order for your cell and your actual DNA, your DNA strands and your actual genome, which is your nucleus, and your mtDNA, which is your family record history, to function properly, you have to have light frequencies of at least 42 types or more, even better, powering through that mitochondria into the actual nucleus and into the mtDNA. mtDNA sits in your mitochondria and it floats around as a ring spiral, literally in the shape of a ring, and it's spiraled all the way around. And it receives its light frequency energy from the minerals that's in the mitochondria that it floats in. Your family DNA is stored inside of mitochondria. And if you study the history of mitochondria, it's its own species, like midichlorians are. The descriptions of what they do in the movie and in the scientific documents on these two separate named things, midichlorians and mitochondria, is identical. All those electrical light frequencies, if they're fully powered out of your DNA, out of your mitochondria, then go into your senses. And that's where reality is operating, formed, and existent consciousness.
All of that you are explaining, the concept that I brought forth, activation of our blood code codex, and the memory unlocks the tesseract in terms of these mathematical reversals. And that's where you start to truly transcend.
Right.
Connection to the core essence of who you are, where the gold of consciousness itself is igniting within your system. This is what they don't want to happen. What they know would counter-strike and is counter-striking, and as far as I'm concerned, needs to be seen for what it is, taking the opportunity in terms of the full rites initiation, because now this is a part of everything. And everybody that's been initiated is now required as a part of your advancement, as a part of your evolution, as a part of your potential taking the alchemical rites of initiation. The very first thing in terms of protocol is that the prima materia must be primed. We have to eat right, we have to exercise, we have to be healthy, we have to be drinking clean water. On top of the fact that we're dealing with hyperdimensional warfare on levels that I've gone very deep into, exposing, also giving the solution. In terms of our focus and our path work, being aware of what's going on in the world, we are in a hyperdimensional fucking war. At the same time, we are here to end the war of ages and declare the birthright of humanity in terms of all of this. The wars that took place in context when these fallen fuckers came to harvest what? The gold. It was not just to cut us off and cause us cataclysm confirmations to Sakura when they ripped open this fucking wormhole. Started to harvest the human race in the Middle East from Mount Hermon, bleeding all the way fucking into Egypt, where this legacy, this dynasty existed millions of years before. And these are the records that had been kept and vaulted and sealed and closed the fuck off to the general population. At the same time, having taken shamanic initiation for the last 20 fucking years, the memories and the things that have been revealed to me as far as my lineage and what I've shared with you in terms of the Rossi Cross sigil on my family crest.
Regarding sun bonds, that's a very important topic because there's modern geological science that has verified that gold as a particle does things identical to what suns do in space. That has been confirmed by astrophysicists. So if you listen to astrophysicists, PhD at the world's top universities are doing research on how suns function. All suns are orbiting in ring planes in galaxies. Like our solar system is currently orbiting in the ring plane of the galaxy. You have billions, in some cases trillions of stars. And the stars that are similar color and similar size are always in alignment in the ring plane. And they actually send charge and energy through each other, and that's called the sun bond. That's important because gold, compared to any other mineral, is the only one that's doing this in the same way that the suns are. In other words, if you look at other minerals, if I take a bunch of minerals and pull them apart so they're just by themselves, and I put them in water, which is how all water is in streams and rivers and in the ocean, There's salt and all kinds of minerals in that water, and they're hosted in the water's central molecular core, which is a hexagon-shaped core. And that's what holds the electrical charge in water and then brings electricity and light into life.
And this is what's been manipulated in terms of the fucking hex, man. So unlocking and breaking this fucking spellcaster.
Only gold versus all the other elements in the periodic chart, all the other minerals. If you go to an archaeological site that's 8,000 years old, and there was artifacts in there with ancient technology, not modern technology, everything in there would be annihilated after 8,000 years. Even the bodies that were there in the bones, all that's left is the fossil, which is the impression of the bones on some kind of rock that happened to be able to survive 8,000 years. The only exception is gold. In other words, when they find a gold artifact that was sculpted or made by some artist or engineer from thousands of years ago that made something out of gold, it literally is identical to the moment that that person put it there. It didn't age, it doesn't tarnish, it doesn't corrupt. It's the same on the nanoscopic, micro and nanoscopic level. If you pull gold apart down to the nanoscopic level, the one individual gold mineral, gold particle, say you take 10 or 20 or 30 of those nanosphere gold particles, every element can be broken down into single particles, it still operates the same way. It doesn't corrupt, it's inert to all biological life and all chemicals and all chemistry. When it's in life, not just human biology, but any life, your body will just grow right around it as if it's symbiotic with your own body. That's because historically they are. That's why if you use any other element, it will turn green and infect your body, and your body will start attacking it, and it's very unhealthy. But gold doesn't corrupt with life, with biology, or by itself. This was my point about those sun bonds. Because it doesn't corrupt, because it's inert, because it doesn't interact with anything else, chemistry or hormonally or biologically, with anything around it. When a gold sphere nanoparticle is in your body, operating in your mitochondria, when your mitochondria is running off this mineral versus other minerals, because of its inertness and its incorruptibility, when your mitochondria is producing your ATP, which produces all the biochemistry of your body and all the hormonal energy of your body, that's what your ATP does. It makes the ATP in 34 specific forms. The shell of that mitochondria is, the interesting thing is it doesn't just store your light body. When the light comes out of that part of your body, the mitochondria, that's what becomes all the biochemistry and chemistry in your body. So if you have an element that doesn't corrupt, it's inert, it doesn't react negatively to anything, the accuracy of the mitochondria's output of all your body's biochemistry and hormonal energy that goes to all your organs and all your senses and all the 5 senses, different types of cellular structures of your body, you have a sun bond of light that doesn't get corrupted, that moves out of the mitochondria after charging, and it just keeps superconducting. It's proven to superconduct at room temperature. No other element does that at biological temperature. In fact, that's why in 1934, when they confiscated all the U.S. citizens' gold in a lot of other countries, that's also the same year that quantum biology came out. And quantum physics started that same year. So the same year that we have the birth of what eventually becomes the founding of the field itself of quantum science and quantum biology in 1934. It relates to gold because they were using gold in these research studies, reports, and scientific programs all along, and they are to this day. And that's the sun bond. Light frequency uncorruptibly keeps shining into all of your body. So your evolution, your omniscience, intelligence, and consciousness, which means your consciousness in the present, past, and future at the same time or separately, is more coherent. And all of your senses with that is more coherent because the sun bonds, the light frequencies of the gold particles is transmitting more. If you take 10 or 100 or 1,000 gold spheres, 10 or 100 or 1,000 suns, they transmit a light frequency if they're a similar size sphere. So most of my life inventing machines that take light frequency, energy, plasma, and send it into a gold bar, gold object, pull it apart atom by atom, one gold sphere at a time by one gold sphere. If you take 10 or 1,000 or a million gold spheres that are the same size, say 5 nanometers, it just literally starts superconducting that frequency of light. You end up with all the colors of the rainbow. You have gold all the way to blue and all these different colors circuiting light in water. No other element can do that when you liquefy it. If I liquefy anything else in the periodic chart, anything else other than gold, it turns into mud. I'm the only person who's done it through light frequency energy in an organic, natural way, the way it's done in nature, the way nature in ecological systems was doing it during the time of Eden. There is an organic version of gold being in life and in biology and in ecological systems. That's a fact. The first synapse in your brain, every time you have a thought, anytime your consciousness starts thinking and you're aware of yourself, that starts with a synapse. Then you have a neural network of neurons that get triggered and they pull up memory, and then that's how you arrive at a thought. The first thought in your brain triggers from one cell that's running off a gold particle. In other words, every human on the earth and all living things have a very small amount, but gold nanoparticle in their biology, in their liquid, in their water, in their body.
And that's the significance of understanding the true technology. A lot of people and a lot of fucking teaching out there, especially in terms of religion, the New Age movements, even organized occultism, want to negate the physical vessel, the importance of the technology of the physical body. You can't fucking ascend without it, everybody. And that's the difference here in terms of integration, because when you go through the process of the alchemical rites of initiation, people are hitting the ceiling, people are hitting a wall, especially when you start ripping past the veils. You go through this process, and those that have been initiated know about the blackening stage, where you come face to face with these malevolents, these beings that you cannot negotiate with. You cannot barter with them. You can't have any rapport because they don't give a fuck, and they are just here to devour your essence your biology, feast upon your fucking soul, and fuel line their good works in context to what has been laced out via the needle.
I bet people like that. I really have. I don't deny that at all.
That is what they are doing in terms of priming the prima materia for invasion. Whereas this is priming the prima materia for integration of not only your true eternal spirit to blood code, soul code essence, but the ignition and the embodiment of your true light body here within the biological form. That is what the original humans were. The first and second seeding were almost completely fucking annihilated, taken into the occult history. And all these wars that have taken place, take it back to Kemet and the shit that went down in terms of the Sumerian Draconian Empire. They came to harvest the gold. And it wasn't just the ore of the earth, it was your essence. It was your fucking soul. The Watchers have a fucking treasure in context. I faced these fuckers. Okay? And it's reaching a point now where people need to come to the level of knowing what the fuck is really going on in the reality field on a multidimensional level, but also what is far beyond what religion has alluded to. And I have never once denied the Christos, but the Christos is something that is nothing attributed to cube cults in terms of what they've been taught.
I agree with everything you're saying. I do.
They're limited in terms of their knowledge, and this is why the libraries and the schools need to be recreated again in terms bringing the proper knowledge and wisdom to a world that is wanting to know.
They will devolve when they're going through stress and trying to survive. It'll be harder for them to up-evolve. It'll be harder for them to learn, harder for them to adapt and become stronger. It's less healthy for their body. If you go in a forest where there's a lot of trees, if you're sick in Switzerland, they will give you a prescription to go out into the forest where there's denser oxygen and cleaner water, where the biosphere is healthier, and they've proven that actually will heal you faster than almost anything. When the Egyptians were obsessed with the Hathor temples and Eden and restoration of Eden, that's what this was about. That's why that's where they found 65 tons of liquid gold in those temples, where they were teaching this knowledge. The ancient Egyptians knew that if you put somebody where there's a lot of trees and there's a better ecological system, whatever they're going through, whether they're healing from a sickness or they're trying to develop a talent, it all just works better. We're being taken away from what's organically, naturally healthy and being forced into something that has less of those things that we really need for our omniscience, intelligence, and consciousness to fully develop and fully exist. And becoming like some kind of robot or something below what we were. And that's the war we're all facing. You don't want to go in a path where you devolve below your genetic greatness or standard. You'll devolve into something deformed where you can't even get out of that hell anymore because you're too far down and gone.
And there is a point of no return, and people need to understand that. We are in a fucking war. This war hasn't ended. It's been going on for not just millennia, but millions of years, if you want to take it. Again, the most important factor in terms of everything is who's doing the real fucking work. Who's actually taking their existence, setting themselves in alignment with proper knowledge and wisdom. There's no other school out there like the one that has been created here. It does go back to a lot of the memory in terms of my own ignitions, the blood codes, the memories, all of these different things. Why have I been working to create what I have all these years? Why have you been doing the work that you have all these years? Because it's part of a bigger picture that involves people that are not just mature, spiritually speaking, but when you go to face Anubis, when you go to weigh your heart at those scales and you're not in alignment, you're not getting into the halls. You're not getting access to your records. You're not getting access to the true memories and all of these things that pertain to our history that have led up to the present moment in terms of the procession. We are at the fucking threshold of a new aeon. So wouldn't it make fucking sense that the higher force itself, nature, the universe, is going to do something unlike anything that's ever been done before in the face of what the fuck is going on? All this bullshit, kiss my ass, it can go into the fucking cosmic trash can. And taking things back to the prophecy, the White Dragon prophecy, we are in this, where all of us are going to come back at table and weave this cosmic tapestry back together in a way where those seams, those streamlines, those weaves of consciousness in terms of the fates are not going to be fucking broken. And in terms of the brokenness of this world, now people are blind to what's right in front of them, let alone the opportunity that's being presented here in context of the Nectar of Athanation and what we are setting forth into the reality field. It is now physically manifesting in terms of the legacy to what once was and is here now in our present hour. Also the fire of this platform and what Black Earth Productions represents. And pull the segment into a break. This is Seth Gisposa, Blue Flame, Healing Arts and Occult Science here with the Jedi Eric Jennings. We'll be right back after the break. Let the darkness flee and the shadows melt away. Let life spring forth where my rays of light land. I am the center of all life and the source of it. And I am also the destination. As once you came forth from me, little spark, so you desired awareness of me and unity with me. And now you are no longer a spark, but a bright, blazing flame, wondrous to behold, riding triumphant and bearing the banner of my light. You are the child of my golden dawn, the little sun upon the earth, but you have always been thus. You just lack the awareness of it. You have walked through many shadows, seen many kinds of truth alleged, and offered many sorts of illuminations. It is only I that can grant you the true enlightenment. Never let your gaze turn from me. Follow truth and true illumination with every step henceforth, and take my hand as we herald the light of truth to the world. Watch us rise. Back now from the break. This is Seth Exposer, Blackheart Productions, Blue Flame Healing Arts, and Occult Science with the Jedi Eric Jennings. And so as to continue into the true occult history and revealing of the hard science of the Nectar of Athanasia. It is the gold of consciousness that we are extracting to access, both spiritually and physically, here in Midgard. Everything that happened in Egypt goes back to very great betrayals that took place among the wisdom councils. I want to get more into the crux of the 18th and the 19th dynasty.
What you just brought up is a huge lexicon that connects to everything both of us have discussed. What you have is a major event in human history where Thothmoses I, before the 18th dynasty, before Thothmoses III in his battle, there were giants on record from the Egyptians and any other records you look at. Right around the time that Hatshepsut died, Thothmoses III was in charge of her intelligence agencies and her military. And there was an alliance that was being built to invade Egypt by these giants who had about 360 normal-sized kings, 70 princes in the service of these giants who were 12 giant kings, who had 12 giant armies. They had artifacts showing paintings of these giants and their armies and in their giant dogs that were for military purposes that were decorated like you'd put horse gear on for a war, hound dog, like animals, and they were in charge of this whole operation. They owned the central banks, not humans.
Right.
The actual giants that I'm referring to that own central banks, they were like 18 feet tall. They found their bodies. They're real. Like they've confirmed they're real. There's real scientific.
Right.
If somebody spends enough time, they'll find that out.
This all goes back to the Nephilim Wars invasion of the fallen Anu in context. These Watchers, the Shining Ones is another term that I explained in terms of the betrayal of Thoth. That guy Grail Shaman series that I presented. This is verified fact.
Well, the whole 18th to 19th dynasty transition is that history.
Right.
It is that event. It was really transformational with that transition, and it changed the entire world since then.
Right. So the crux of everything in terms of the procession all go back to the Dark Luciferian covenant. This secret covenant, take it back to the Khazars and all this fucking bullshit.
Right. The dark side existed before Thothmoses III. He fought against them and he won. He won the sovereignty of humanity. He created these public schools to make the knowledge on gold public. And then when the 19th dynasty took over, they erased all of that and took it over and inverted it back. It was inverted after it was taken over and dominated by the 19th dynasty.
Right. And that was the rise of the cult of ATHAN and the Sethians.
Setians who took over where the immortalogical science records were kept. In addition to Heliopolis, that was a major important area for the pharaonic family.
And this all goes back to the Black Sun cult in context, the inversion of the energy of Saturn that needs to come back into alignment.
Elborg.
Anyone that is going with the notion that Saturn is evil, you're full of fucking shit and you don't know what you're talking about in terms of cosmology. If you don't work with Saturn, Saturn's going to grind your ass to powder. And that's the whole fucking point in terms of these inverted structures that have been erected all around us. And so seeing it for what it is, going back to the rise and fall of empires, they have always ruled behind the scenes. There's many out there that know the difference in terms of how they play both sides of the equation, the false cold light versus the actual fucking evil itself. It's all a part of the same thing. And this in turn, taking things back to Thutmose I, and even further in terms of history, go a little bit into that
This is huge topics, and they need to be explained. Thutmose I and Queen Ahotep, according to the Egyptian records, came from Kefchu. And according to those records, carved in stone in Karnak, Solon was aware of this. And the libraries from Solon that came from the priest in Karnak, the Temple of Amun-Ra, explains this whole history about Thutmose I, the second, the third, and Kefchu. If you read what the Egyptians said about Kefchu, they said it was the only other civilization on Earth that was as advanced and equal to their own. All others were below them both. And they went further, and they clearly stated that the 18th dynasty and its founding fathers and mothers, the grandmother of Thutmose III and grandfather, which is Thutmose I and his wife, they actually came from Kefchu. There are exact quotes in Karnak, carved in stone, showing Thutmose I, the second, the third, each one of their wives, and which one of them came from Kefchu, and which one of them transitioned from there and moved into Egypt and then were born in Egypt from those that were moving over. This is a very important history, because what it means is that that family is the only family that claims to be from what Solon and the priest that he got his records on Atlantis from said was Atlantis. Solon was told by the priest of Amun-Ra Atlantis's name to the Egyptians was called Kefchu. And you can't build huge pyramids and a huge civilization unless you have an empire. The history of Thutmose and his family is very important because it goes back to all these different interlinking points factually, and even at the story of Atlantis itself, because that's the only family out of the 33 dynasties that claims to be from Kefchu. Very important things pertaining to this that confirm what these words and translations are saying are in fact true. It was the first place in Europe and in the known world to have road systems with names for roads. It was the first to have flushing toilets. It was the first to have hot and cold running water. And there's evidence that it was the first to have a form of electricity and light generation. If you read what Solon said, and if you read what Timaeus and Critias said, which is the official story on Atlantis, its origins, it describes all of these features that Atlantis had. That's why this subject leads to a lot of lexicons of topics and libraries and histories. And when you get to the gold part and the schools part, he created a public school. And in that school system, he was giving people the knowledge on gold so they could upmute and develop their talents in the X schools. And that was his goal. Defeating about 400 kings and princes. Each one of them had an army. He defeated all of them. Taught heart-weighing and heart-field sciences and heart-weighing ceremonial practices that his family got from Atlantis. The Egyptians said they got from the Kefchu people. And I have records showing that the people in Kefchu had this knowledge, and it did move down from them into Egypt.
Right.
So we're talking about a higher civilization with higher heart-field IQ, passing knowledge from Atlantis to Egypt. And then when the other poor, more devolved, messed up people that lost the knowledge on the heart-field sciences and arts, and even cardiological sciences in general, when they saw a king who had that knowledge and was giving it in public schools, also giving them liquid gold, there's records of that also, so that they could develop their talents and have a better balanced heart and knowledge on the connection between humans and our hearts and the way the heart field works. And the heart field ceremony was all about that. And this is the origin of it. And it's public education.
Right, because you're not getting into the halls otherwise. You're not getting access to the real records, your memories, who you really are. The real question for everybody out there is, who the fuck are you? And you're not going to access this knowledge. This is why this school has been created, to not only honor the ancestors in terms of codex, getting into the galactic spiral creation. I mentioned things in terms of soul codes and the ancient Egyptian pharaonic high priest genetics that course through my blood and bones. Everything that you are saying is confirming more than you can imagine in terms of the memory that has come to me. With the implication of this technology here again in our time, in terms of the procession, is going to be this counterstrike in the face of all this fucking evil, because it's just the same playouts, genetic modification again, priming the prima materia for fucking invasion. What the fuck?
When Atlantis fell and Egypt fell,
exactly. What the fuck did happen in Atlantis?
18th and 19th dynasty was the fall of Egypt. The priest of Amun-Ra said Egyptian civilization has fallen, and then it happened again during the time of Cleopatra. And that's when they burnt down the Library of Alexandria at the end.
But as far as the true records and knowledge are concerned, it cannot be lost because it's eternal.
The seeding of life properties of gold on the cosmological level, that's real. Confirmed that there's stars all over the universe, billions of them, that have ring planes of gold that are actually creating planets in the rings and creating biospheric atmospheres into those planets forming out of gold in the rings. And that is a seeding of life process, and gold is entirely involved in that process. When the biosphere starts forming, it starts raining water into the biosphere and forming it, and it's raining nano gold particle into it.
Everyone that's been initiated knows in terms of teaching that the heavens above are within us.
Right, exactly.
Process. In terms of cosmology, what's your take in terms of what the higher consciousness of gold having met that multidimensional organic activation, what actually takes place in terms, man?
You have limitless sun bond frequencies, meaning If I took 1 million suns that are all of a similar size, and they've detected energy fields going from sun to sun to sun that are similar size and similar color, and the field of energy that's going from one sun to the next through the line of suns is a sun-bond field of energy, it's a similar frequency. There's a line of stars in front of our star and after our star in our galaxy ring plane, and they are circuiting light energy. Rogue sun flies by and its gravitational field, the sun that it disaligns, suns, it could be multiple ones, their frequency will change and they won't be able to receive light energy, and that sun-bond energy field gets altered. And in a lot of cases, the sun goes out and it dies. That solar system with that sun dies with it. So sun bonds is a very important topic because you find the same behavior in energy field circuitry moving across gold nanoparticle. Every frequency you can imagine is coming from the sun. What you see is like 8% of 92% of light frequency range the sun is actually emitting. It's a tiny percentage. If you're not healthy and you're not able to absorb a lot of frequencies of light, you're only actually receiving a fraction of that. Gold, like the sun, it can superconduct and it can sun bond, absorb and radiate every frequency of light that exists. No other element can do that. It's never corrupting. It's inert with biology. A mineral that's powering your mitochondria, powering your light body, that can have every sun bond, every frequency of light running through you, superconducting at all times, never corrupting, never losing its power. It's always absorbing light energy from whatever's around it, recharging and reprojecting and emitting that field constantly in a constant flow. Gold is the flesh of Ra. That's ancient records from ancient priests. Gold comes from the sun.
Right, and that's a major difference in terms of the product that we are releasing here. Extracting the gold of consciousness myself over the last 20 years, meeting the elixir itself. We are the only ones on the face of the earth that have this. Again, this is not monoatomic, this is not MFKZT, and this is not Orums. This is the nectar of Athanasia in context to what is being presented. Unlike anything else out there in terms, the original recipe, taking the legacy and birthrights of our kind.
Superluminal IQ, it's omniscience IQ increased. Omniscience means that your consciousness is more present in the present time, the second, the future, and the past simultaneously. Right. Not just with your thoughts, but all senses, every part of you. Every part of you that is a part of your consciousness will become omniscient.
And going into observation in terms of thought and the inner knowing, and all of these memories, especially the hour that we are in, we're meant to cross this threshold of doing something that's never been done before since what happened did.
How do you think these rulers have ruled that have run these central banks and gold vaults all through history? They keep it from humanity. Not even the present elite have figured out how to do what I've spent the last 36 years figuring out. Using organic light energy the way that nature does. There's no data anywhere showing that anyone has figured it out since the time of Thothmes III.
Right, like I was talking about, the true records can only be accessed if the heart is in alignment.
They were Setian Satanists from Samaria. Just put it that way.
All the inversion and the twisting of knowledge and teachings.
These people were ignorant because they were from a place that never had access to it outside of Thothmes. He's the only king who gave heart field IQ. And that's important to know about history because it's what changed the dark lands hell historically, been war all through human history. That whole entire line of people, it really goes back to these schools giving the heart field knowledge, heart field IQ to them, giving them access so they could up-evolve. The Setian Satanist side was what was there after without it. Records really indicate that unless they recover that knowledge and that heart field IQ, people, we're all doomed. We all have to improve our heart field IQ. If our omniscient consciousness of the present, future, and past does not have a higher heart field IQ at every moment that it operates, when we operate with them and then with us and then with themselves, it has historically been very destructive.
And that has been the whole point of creating the mystery school in context to everything. Again, like I've said, even before things really started kicking off, that I was taking things back to the original teaching, the original timeline, everything in terms of templating, all of these things that are still available to be accessed in terms of our birthrights as mankind. This is the whole point. This is the why, not only to the why in terms of what actually belongs to us, but the why as to what the fuck is going on in our world and why it's been going on in our world as long as it has. Take it the last 13,000 years to 50,000 year trajectory. It doesn't matter what people assume to know about anything. What matters is who is doing the real work, who is actually experiencing the ignition of the hardcore intelligence and pulling the system mechanics into alignment in terms of magic, getting access to your blueprints, getting access to your maps, getting access to your compasses, and all these things that these arts and sciences reveal in terms of how it all works for you as the individual, because the way it works for you is not the same way it works with me. But at the same time, based upon universal laws of metaphysics, the eternal axioms, how things actually work. What every great magician and alchemist throughout all time knew, and also in terms of being lost, the knowledge, proper knowledge and wisdom, taken to Odin, and the path of Odin, which is mastering human consciousness, the path to self-mastery, and what it all entails in context to the actual temple that this mystery school represents. We are temple of the white dragon, and this is the mandate of the ancestors in terms of what is within our blood and bones. Being in this position, having already worked with and initiated thousands across the earth, the doors are open, as they have been. But taking it even deeper in terms of everything that this segment specifically represents, all of this is offered for those to whom it's meant. And it's a matter for you to decide for yourself what side of history that you're actually going to be on. You can call me insane. You can think I'm crazy. You can think whatever the fuck you want. The proof is not only in the results that the real work entails, but the proof in terms of the elixir met the real work. Reformation, in terms of the occult and our history, has just been made on this platform.
When Thothmas went in there, he didn't just fight them. He added something that helped a more accurate omniscience consciousness of the present, past, and future. That's the key. Diplomacy, like the actual field and diplomacy, originates from him and his family. There's kings all over the lands from the Nile River to the Euphrates, not just in Egypt, but across that whole land, where they were sending letters, the Amarna letters, to Akhenaten, taken over by the 19th dynasty. And it's proven that Seti I was a general under Akhenaten. And Ramses I, his son, was also a military official in and under Akhenaten, who turned and took over the entire thing and created the 19th dynasty.
Right, and this all goes back to the betrayals that took place in terms of the wisdom councils.
Right.
This is a fucking fact and truth. And having gone deep into the actual history myself, memories, knowing that things in terms of my lineage, yours as well, are directly tied to this. And taking the riots and the trials and the fucking bullshit that we've had to face, having to deal with individuals that don't have an activated hardcore intelligence. It hasn't fucking changed in context. These things that we're talking about cannot be refuted. And no matter what anybody assumes, as far as the intentions we are putting forth, this is the birthright of all.
It goes back to the seeding of life and the maintenance of life. It's a central element to all living things in the biosphere and the process of how solar systems and planets are made.
This is volumes in terms of what we're getting into in summary. And there's going to be a lot more revealed in the future. There are things that I have not presented on Black Earth Productions that I am screaming on the inside to be able to present public, but people got to be ready for that.
Exactly. Where Saturn is so important to the elite, it goes right to the core of their gold vaults. And they'd rather keep those to themselves. Where the last 100 years, and however many years you want to count back, there were huge wars just to get what they got. I'm pointing this out to identify that this has always been an issue that needs scholarship, that needs library, that needs well-read people to learn and understand. If people learn and raise their heart field IQ and their omniscience intelligence on their consciousness in the present of all history in the present, past, and future, the reality that's forming will take place in a more accurate way.
That's exactly what I mean in terms of things coming back on to the original timeline trajectory. It will happen organically and manifest.
Right.
These rites of initiation, they've been stripped from culture. They've been stripped from our fucking world. Those that are called to this,
it's
though,
true. It's scary. It's true.
cannot
Absolutely.
escape the rites of initiation. It's not just dark forces of fucking idiots on ground fucking level, man. These beings fucking exist. And these meat sacks on the lower fucking level, man, claim that they do not come from this universe in terms of the wormhole that was written in fucking Sakura, man.
Zachariah Sitchin and all the Anunnaki stuff he's been saying about Sumerians, he admitted in a video that that was just covered for what Egypt was really about and its relevance in history. And that has to do with the history of what we're talking about, like the Omnicron. And there's documents that pertain to the history of these dark beings that were found in the Middle East and in Samaria, and written by the central bankers' intelligence agencies since the 19th dynasty to create all kinds of evil monsters and to keep people away and keep a shield around the gold vault and around the knowledge within. That will keep the war away from them and amongst those other idiots. That's a big psychological operation they've been working since the 19th dynasty that is extremely advanced.
Right. So there's the actual gold vaults that are holding the ore extracted in the earth, but the real vault and the access is already there within yourself. And it's a matter of knowing the difference of how to unlock and decode and crack and activate, having taken the alchemical rites of initiation. You're not going to get access to the gold of consciousness otherwise. And all this knowledge in terms of why they are doing that in terms of the hard science, the chemistry, makes total fucking sense, because that's meant to meet the organic process. So the teaching, the viable proper knowledge necessary to actually have that experience and your connection to the higher force. The force of the Jedi itself goes back to the ancestors. Where do you think they got all of these ideas from? All of this is very real. Not only what's been revealed to me, but what I've actually experienced myself. It's a responsibility. It's a mandate in terms of the ancestors to implement the things that we are getting into the real history, putting our pieces of the equation on the table to be looked at, see how the correlations correspond. That's how the law of correspondence operates. Truth being a master teacher, we position ourselves to be the eternal students. And this can be very difficult, especially when you have activated on levels that me and Eric have. When you come to a certain point and you see a broader spectrum of perception and realize that there's even more that needs to be implemented, it's going to be important for people to recognize that most individuals out there are at the first veil, the push on a world fucking communism and where the fuck it actually comes from, all going back, metaphysically speaking, to the same fucking evil in context that humanity has always been up against. The metaphysical manifestation of all of this being locked in vaults is a manifestation to the condition of the state of mind of most humans on Earth. They have not accessed the gold of consciousness within themselves.
There's a lot of humans who have devolved and degenerated where they're not able to cooperate and co-develop to maintain any basic level of talent or develop any talent, where their rate of learning to advanced technology and controls of power is extremely fast. There starts to develop a disparity. And that's where these intelligence agencies in the 19th dynasty started forming and spreading and creating fake government departments, fake corporations, companies, organizations of humans of every kind you can think of, acting like they're the real one, but they're actually just an intelligence front to control Joe Public, who doesn't even notice any of this. They're all focused on bread and circus and bullshit. It has to do with IQ point distinction science. If you look at someone that is retarded, IQ that's 60, that's borderline for retarded, and normal human is 90, that's 30 points. Anytime you have a 30-point IQ distinction, say you go from 90 to 120, that's 30 points, you literally have issues that show up in every case where the one that's 30 points below just cannot get a whole range of topics and cannot cooperate and co-develop with you. And they'll literally, in a lot of cases, will attack you and ruin what you're trying to do. It's a very interesting thing to study and understand. That's the conflict in the war I've been dealing with the whole way through. It's also that they're surrounded by people who don't understand them in a gigantic number. There's a lot of people who don't want to study, don't want to learn, don't want to know what you're telling them. All the evidence is right in front of them. They'd rather just do something else, including ignoring that and doing something horrible at the same time to themselves and the people around them without knowing they're doing, without being conscious of it.
It's a jockeying for control in terms of everything that you're talking about. It's factions within factions that are fucking opposed and all this fucking infighting and shit. And then, you know, the bleed out in terms of consciousness and the propaganda and the bullshit indoctrination that most people are fucking given. You're going to have to take it upon yourself as an individual that knows the difference to burn and pierce through these veils and come to that point of seeing things even beyond those that would even claim the title elite could fucking even possibly imagine. I know that's what I've experienced, and those that are doing the real work have. And the goal of everything on a grand scale, these wars need to fucking end. We are meant to heal the ancestors in terms of the procession. That's why all of this is happening. And things to the prophecy state that there are two main timelines playing out right now. And it's a question of which timeline individuals are going to choose. Because this AI factor, this Divock AI bullshit is beyond their fucking control. That's what they don't fucking realize is running them. These fuckers aren't human, man. They have not had their heart weight. They have not been ignited. They don't have a fucking soul. Therefore, should be seen for what the fuck they are. We become more terrifying in context of our alignment because there is a protection on levels that people can imagine when you actually go orlog your purpose, your true purpose of incarnation. And this path work takes an individual into becoming fearless. Another term for this is Dranga in context of the Nordic tradition. Odin, having sought wisdom above all things, didn't want this war to take place with a parasitic consciousness in context of the old ones that these sick bastards are putting into the needlecraft, taking that hexagon in terms of the lockdown, infusing the nervous system. And this is what people don't understand about what the fuck is happening right now. And your sacrifice in terms of all of this is going to have its recourse. We have been hailed in this time, you and me and other people that fucking get it. We are the ones being hailed them in this time as to the ancestors. And it is a question of whether or not you can hear them from within the blood codes themselves. And some things in terms of the primal sound fields, the music of spheres, the organic tonal sequences of each dimensional frequency band within the 15th dimensional time matrix, the consolidated core vibrational sound signatures of each dimensional frequency band that are converging here in Midgard. 12 of these core signatures serve as the primary 12 tonal sequences upon which each strand and each axiom line within the planetary shields are structured. And in using the tone sequence of the music of spheres, it is to remember the sound song frequency of consciousness that is there within your core essence. And as to the original template that can progressively be brought into natural activation, scalar wave distortions within the template can be systematically realigned with the natural organic imprint. In terms of path work with the planetary shields, each of the 24 axiom lines can be opened and encoded with the perfect pattern of the planetary plasma beam, directly infused with the axiom lines of the planetary shield. And it's the most rapid method to distribute the activation of the planetary organic imprint throughout our physicality on a multidimensional level. In ancient times, things in terms of the primal sound fields were used extensively for the purpose of self-generated healing and to prepare, again, the physical vessel, the prima materia, for literal passage through the planetary stargates. And this is what the sun is in terms of gates. And in context to ascension, again, ascension happening here, the realignment of the solar north and the specific tone sequence for each singular dimension, which correspond to the DNA strand template and blueprint and the inherent dimension of consciousness that would embody through activation of the strand. This is how we access the primal sound fields. And each song contains a very specific word sound, again, taken to the Fire Letter Codex, and our specific multi-layered tones, which generate tritone standing waves. And the sound song frequency used through the human voice. The song has to be used in terms of evocation. It has to be used in terms of Galda, whereas the sacred song was used in combination with directing specific corresponding color and symbol sequences through the bioenergetic field and planetary axiom lines for planetary shield work, which serves to open specific areas in the DNA template in context to the gold of consciousness. And in terms of a specific signature core frequency of consciousness, the sound song frequency, the song of the 8th sphere, corresponds to the 8th dimensional level of the 3 spirals of creation and its 8 primary stargates in terms of the galactic spiral of creation, which also corresponds to the 8th planetary axiom line within the etheric matter held within the planetary shield, and to the 8th DNA strand template portion within the physical vessel, the 8th dimensional stargate within the universal grid to the 3 spirals of creation is the stargate that opens in through the gate of Orion. And the song that was given, the original song that was given, was the Aria Cum Nara, the primary color wavelength scale for directing interdimensional frequencies of consciousness. The 8th gate is everything to do with gold. Now, how do you actually really feel in terms of all of this, man?
I just want to help restore the heart-filled IQ of the previous periods and the scientific, technological development of those times where they also had a harmony with that. So your technology, when it develops, restoring the Eden biosphere structure, the knowledge was known. I had to reinvent things that just totally lost completely. They were able to see formations that had to do with shaping reality 3,300 years since the end of the 18th dynasty till now. That's a lot of different families fighting over the gold, murdering each other, and losing libraries. It's a major part of what happened here with these intelligence agencies transitioning from generation to generation. And the reason it stuck is because it allowed them to create any kind of facade in reality and modifications of reality they want, always working on a separate fake reality to merge with the real reality to make it what they want it to be. And that's why they have front government departments and organizations and companies and corporations. That's what communism is. That's what cultural Marxism is. It acts like one thing when it's actually doing the diametric opposite with super scientific psychological operations to make you think it's doing the opposite of what it is in fact doing. That's what they've always been doing since the 19th dynasty. It was first formulated back then by Seti I. He did things on that front that are just diabolic, Machiavellian times 1,000. This is a part of scholarship, history, and understanding of what actually happened. When you look at the present elite today and the present government officials today and the present corporations that are out there that look like they're running things, there's something else behind and woven into both of them. And they just keep weaving and weaving and weaving. And they've been doing this since 3,300 years ago. And communism in particular, and modern capitalism that created the communist and cultural Marxists that acts like one thing when in fact it's another or the opposite. That's the most advanced modern version of it. If you want to understand that system and who's really in charge above all these intelligence agencies and corporations, it's the banks. It always has been banks. That's not a theory. It's an historical record that's everywhere around the planet.
Things in terms of the temporal existence, yes. But as far as other things happening on a multidimensional level, there are other forces. At the same time, there is something far beyond what they could fucking comprehend. And that's the point to everything here.
And then when you see that, you can actually see who has the high heart-filled IQ, who doesn't. That's what I focus on, is those who have the highest heart-filled IQ. And that's who I've focused on advancing all of my own work, because that increases the reality projection and creation that operates within the second and our omniscience intelligence. And that's what gold helps you with, consume it as an organic, life-inducing force, which is what it really historically has been. Gold is a part of all those processes and the sun itself.
What is happening, and I'm just talking about my personal experience in terms of anything I've taken, igniting my fucking system.
We're just going to get more powerful every year. That's the that's what's going to happen.
That I want to share with you that are going to make you even more powerful.
I appreciate that.
It's going to blow your fucking mind. You probably know about them. A lot of people do, but once you really see it, on top of everything else, it's one thing to do research and study, but the actual experience you have in terms of transformation levels in context to intelligence versus people that fucking haven't. What's going to be the difference in terms of the effect here, man?
If your body doesn't have a lot of experience operating at the extent of the limit of capabilities and talents at the end of your 5 senses, in harmony together. That's what an intelligent person can do. And the more of their senses, the more intelligent they generally will be. So what I'm saying is somebody who has less background and experience doing that, when they put all that gold in them, it's just not going to do as much for them. It's not that it's not going to work. It's not that it's not going to make them feel clear-headed. It's that you and me will detect 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 things, and they'll detect 5 things by the time they get to the end versus 20 or 30 or 40. Right. They might only detect 2. That has to do with how far down that chain they are. They're not all capable of or even wanting to do anything. You have to identify these people, so you be careful how much time you waste with them. People like us really will become more intelligent and powerful. Our omniscience consciousness in the present moment, next second, and future and the past all becomes more coherent, more higher chemistry accurate. So when you're moving through time space in the moment, whether you're learning or you're teaching or you're creating, you're doing it better. You're healing better, you're creating better, you're helping somebody else create a better reality, you're helping yourself create a better reality. And then when you start doing it in groups of people that are like that are similarly talented, you become more powerful than anyone around you.
Right.
That's what we are and are becoming more and more. We'll never stop. Our way through this fucking hell and this planet and all this stuff is to find more people like you and me who already have developed enough of themselves so that when this stuff flows through their veins and these light circuits move through their veins, there's more places for it to operate because they've already used more of those places. So it's starting with 20 or 50 or 1,000 as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4 places. I'm not saying it's a waste. You don't really know what they're going to do. Some of them will just have a bad dream because they didn't listen to me. They took it all right before they went to sleep. So it all goes to their subconscious mind. And then they have a dream they fell through a wall. Okay, that's the worst case scenario. Unification lexicon codex is the cerebrum. That's the human. That's the part that reptiles don't have, is cerebrum in the brain. Okay, put the gold in that higher part. That's an energy field that's about creating evolution and consciousness that is aware of what it's doing.
And that's the point of going through the multidimensional organic process of the biospiritual regenesis, which was the original purpose of incarnation into this reality.
Exactly. You hit the nail right in the head.
Of everything to the birthrights and what we are doing here at Black Earth Productions with the Mystery School and everything that's been developed. All of this implemented, those that have been doing the real work, that have experienced that eternal spirit to soul code blood code ignition from the core. When this meets that, it's going to set you into an alignment that I cannot, again, put into words. Now, if anybody out there wants to partner with us, get a hold of myself, and I'll take you through the process of explaining everything in context to what is unfolding. This is a part of the full rites initiation session now in terms of the alchemical rites and the practical alchemy meeting the spiritual process. It's also made available that have not taken the initiation. As for rites, it is going to be more in terms, as explained on the products page on the website. There's also more that we have to offer with everything there in terms of promotion. And for anyone that is interested, check out the website. Again, click on the services page. And to set things up for that or any of the other services we have in context to everything, send me an email. I look forward to corresponding with more people that are ready to go to the next level. And in terms of everything, again, we are the only ones on Earth that have this recipe. It is unlike anything else out there that would even claim to be on the level of what is being implemented in the reality field now in terms of the Mystery School. Eric, again, I want to thank you for coming on, man. It was fucking excellent, dude.
Thanks for inviting me. Really great. And I hope everybody learned a lot. I'd love to follow it up, add something to this as an addendum later on.
And we are going to continue to rectify the situation. There's other pieces to the equation other people fucking have as well. That's the beautiful fucking thing, man, about these roundtables that once in alignment. All of these things that we touched upon are very, very important. And with the launch of everything, I want individuals to consider the fact that you are being given an opportunity unlike any other opportunity on Earth right now. Everything that's being implemented with that is for the purpose of promotion, and not only promotion, but giving people the opportunity to get access to the Nectar of Athanasia, the technology, the knowledge, all of it in terms of the ancestors, to change the course of history as we know it in the face of everything that is happening in our world. For those that haven't signed up for the full rites initiation session, everything is included in terms of what we got into to wrap things up for this specific segment. From the fierce contest of wills and the competition of strength, fresh from the battlefield and array in the light of 1,000 suns, I ride forth into my kingdom in triumphal procession. I have overcome the finest warriors and the most cunning magicians for this position, and it is now mine by divine birthright. I came from my mother's womb already a hero, bursting with light and blessing, and I tested my strength and desire through many hardships and years. Only the best may lead, only the wisest, power given by virtue and proof. I am a king, I am a pharaoh, for the virtues that make me this. My will is the strongest, my achievements, my ambition the most high. I swear to protect my people, rise up against thy enemy when the horn of battle sounds. Give them a voice and allow the light of 1,000 suns to shine as brightly upon them as it does upon us. Things in terms of the Master Key Codex are going to be revealed this year on Black Earth Productions. There are more interviews that are going to be made public. More teaching is going to be coming forth in context to the Polaris Extract and the White Dragon Prophecy. This is Seth Esposa, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, and Occult Science. The power of the Blue Flame is real.
Aloha friends and family. Here we are at the local Smoky Mountain, Tennessee mountaintop where we get our water spring. Got to show you how to create the formulation for Orums, or salt water, with our nice Smoky Mountain water spring. Now this water, as well as distilled water, has a high alkalinity, pH, perfect pH, with the stirred up lye. So you have Himalayan sea salt, your glass beaker jug there, and all you would do is kind of just mix the two, this to raise the alkalinity pH. Just keep stirring and stirring the Himalayan sea salt. Aloha friends and family, it's your friend Earthman Eric Plott from MFKZT.com, live here in the Great Smoky Mountains with pure spring water instilled from life and nature, filling up with the jugs. Check out my Tennessee Astonishing video. If you look up Astonishing Tennessee, you'll see it on YouTube and Vimeo. See what I'm doing here. It's pretty awesome. It's like vortex water here, and you know, we might make our own Orums. We do have the Monoatomic Ormy available, which literally has real forms of gold, palladium, silver, platinum, rhodium, etc. Check that out at MFKZT.com. People are asking for the high price. Why is that? Well, just read about it. We do the David Hudson original form of Ormy, and you can read more about that on the blogs as well. Everybody's looking for the top quality with a top. Alright, here we are again. I'm going to get the goggles on just because we have lye, sodium hydroxide. This is pH 6.86. So this is a perfect pH. This is where you want your pH in your body. And so what we did here with the calibrator, let's put that in here, and see it's 6.7.8. Give it a nice little stir. Let it sit. Then you press calibrate. 1, 2, 3. There it is. And it starts flashing. Hold the meter still until it stops flashing. Okay. 6.8, 6.9. Okay. Then you want to kind of rinse it, dry it off. We'll actually rinse it in this. This is distilled water here. So now it's cleaned up. And then this is the calibrate 9.18. This is if we're trying to get the pH 7 or above. If I was looking for something acidic, I would go from 7 to 4 or below. So we're going above, because for the Ormus, we need to get to 10.7, 8 or so. So we shake it up a little bit here. We're going to do the 9. So you immerse the electrode, stir the meter gentle for a few seconds. Hold still the meter. Okay, it's way up there, you can tell, already at 12 pH. So gently for a few seconds. While the meter's in solution, press the calibrate. So we're going to press this guy down. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it's flashing. Then press it again, immediately press it again, and then press it again. Hold the meter down until it stops flashing. So hold it down. Then hold it down again. Okay. 6.8, so that's a balance. Let me turn it off on me. Not sure. Okay, we're going to put it here. Take the meter out of solution, rinse it, distill water, dry the meter on the drying pad. Okay, so then from there, that's what calibrates this. Now it should be a good reader, pretty much. So, for instance, let me make sure it's really dry here, because it's still reading something. Okay. It's just the air, I guess. Okay. Did I clean it? Yeah. That's it too. This is the water out of the spring over here, which I just talked to a man who's an Indian, Crow, who just assured me that there was a study done by Maryville, University of Maryville?
University of Tennessee.
Tennessee. Said that it's 99% plus probably
99.99% pure.
purity in this water. So that's reassuring. Now, this is pretty good water. I don't know. Cover it, turn it off.